Hello, and welcome to Book of the Mouse Club, episode 116, Wednesday, July 30th, 2025.
Morning, monsieur.
Where are you off to?
The bookshop. I just finished the most wonderful story about a beanstalk and an ogre and
That's nice. Marie! The baguettes! Hurry up!
I'm sorry, but how can one possibly pay attention to a book with no pictures in it?
My dear child, there are a great many good books in this world without pictures.
I almost bounced clear out of the book. Some bouncing, huh?
Come home or make myself known.
J. Thaddeus Turtle, Esquire. Have you never met him? You will find his story in this delightful little book, The Wind and the Willows.
I've come to return the book I borrowed.
Finished already?
Oh, I couldn't put it down. Have you got anything new?
Welcome back. I'm your host, Courtney, and I'm joined, as always, by the Fez Parker to my Art Link letter, my lovely co-host, Emily.
Hello, listeners, and today we're going to go into our second selection for our Celebratory Summer Series in honor of Disneyland. And for this episode, I'm also to welcome back my fellow South Jersey to the show.
Yes, we are happy to welcome back an author and guest from one of our early episodes, Aaron H. Goldberg. Aaron was a guest way back on episode 19 when we interviewed him about his book, Meet the Disney Brothers, a young reader's chronicle of both Walt and Roy's life and accomplishments that shaped the Walt Disney Company from its early beginning. Aaron's collection of work also includes The Disney Story, The Wonders of Walt Disney World, Buying Disney's World, and his latest book, which is the topic of our discussion today, Presenting Disneyland, Forgotten Photographs from Opening Day. Featuring never-before-seen photographs, Presenting Disneyland transports you in Technicolor to July 17th, 1955. We are excited to have Aaron back on the show as part of our Celebratory Summer Series in honor of Disneyland's 70th anniversary. Welcome back, Aaron.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Aaron, it's been 5 years since we've had you on this show, and it's exciting to see over time how your body of work has grown. We're also glad to have you back specifically for the Celebratory Summer Series because we're focusing on Disneyland's 70th anniversary. And other than your book, have you done anything special to celebrate this big milestone?
I wish I could say I did, but going to Disney World every week, does that count? But that's just my norm.
Extension of Disneyland.
I do that anyway, regardless. But yeah, no. I mean, I bought the 70th anniversary book that Disney put out, and it's an amazing book. But that's kind of it.
Well, that is also on our radar as well, so we're happy to hear that. But
Yes.
this was such a fun way for us to celebrate as we were coming up with titles for our themed summer. We came across here. It's like, oh, we know Aaron. How fun! And this is such a unique book, being that it is mostly compiled of photographs. So I'd love to start off by diving right into that. Can you tell us more about the studio employee who took the photographs featured in your book?
Sure. So he worked in the camera department, and he was only at Disney for a handful of years. I think he was out. He actually went to Universal. He was over in Universal by the 60s. By I think 59 or 60, he already left Disney. And I think he started in 52 or 53. So he was only there for a handful of years, but he was fortunate enough to get the invite, the legit invite, not the counterfeit invite to crash the party. But yeah, so he made his way. He actually was in Disneyland a few days prior. He was also taking pictures back at the studio of things that were going to make their way into Disneyland. And actually, there's a smattering of pictures from around Christmas time of 55 as well. These photos then, they were actually Kodak. So it's interesting to me, Disney didn't shoot anything in color. Their photos weren't really in color. These were in Kodak Kodachrome slides. And they were very vibrant, and they're forgotten for 60 years. They were just in his house, and his family members reached out and asked me if I wanted to make a purchase, and then made the purchase. And I had to share these with the world, so I had them professionally cleaned and scanned in, and tried to cobble together a book without really. I don't want to say I wasn't really trying to write a book. I wanted to showcase these photos, especially if you have them like on an iPad and you have the ebook. The photos are beautiful, and I didn't want to take away from them, and I didn't want to tell the Disneyland story. So I sort of just tried to marry the photos with quotes from around the time of the opening, to just as a compliment, and hopefully that stuck. Hopefully that landed.
So around what time frame did they reach out to you? Because was this intended to be for the 70th anniversary, or was that just fortuitous, that timing?
This was 2022, 23.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was 2022. Yeah. And I sat on them for a while because I mean, I knew I was gonna, I wanted them to be in a coffee table, but I didn't really know exactly what I wanted, how to do it. That's always, to me, it's like, that's the problem. Like, that's the kicker here. How do you, feature these photos? They're beautiful, not overwhelm with content, not tell a story that's been done 50 times, 500 times, that so many books have been published on Disneyland. And, hindsight now, with the book that Disney put out, I'm glad I didn't try to attempt to do that, because that book's amazing. And I mean, as a matter of fact, it was crazy. I had an email really early one morning, and I look at the subject. I look at the person it's from, and I almost fell out of my chair. It's like 6 o'clock in the morning, and it was from Don Hahn.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, okay. And I opened it up, and he wanted to license a picture for that book, for their book, for the 70th book. That was in my book. It's actually the photo I used for the cover of this book made its way into the Disney book.
How nice.
I think it's in the 50s.
What an honor.
Right? Like, and I was like, boy, I'm sure. And after hindsight, now that I looked over that book a handful of times, I'm like, oh, I'm glad I didn't even attempt to do this. I'm glad I just kind of stayed with what, simplicity of what I put together here, because that book's great.
That's really awesome. And it is such a unique book in that sense. Writing a book based on photographs is a totally different writing style than books that we've read from you before. How did you approach this differently as an author that compared to your past works?
I go after a lot of archival stuff, in the sense of, I often over the years, I don't know why I would buy things, but at auctions, I'd buy tons of documents and paperwork from the studio. I would just buy them. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with them, and I don't even know what's in them, what's in the, in these auctions. But over the years, I just buy a ton of paperwork from the studio. And after having all these photos, I went back and looked at a ton of the paperwork that I purchased recently, a more recent purchase, and I knew higher paperwork from the 1960s, and it had like for someone working in the studio, and it went over like the wisdom of Walt and all these quotes, and it told the story, and I'm like, oh, this is like gold for a book. So I'm just going to sit here and read all these quotes, pull out quotes that I like, and see if I can marry them to photos. And the same way for, basically, I went back to the archives on newspapers, and just started in 54, and would just read articles and see if there's content that's relatable, which is totally foreign to the way I would normally write. Normally I would write, I would basically outline and do chapters through, and try and go, or most of my books were sort of organic, in the sense that the Disney story went from, Mickey Mouse's creation to 2016. So I would go, sort of like a linear organic growth of the company. Buying Disney's World was similar. I went from, I told a little bit of the Disneyland story to how did we get to Disney World, and then again I went from 61, 62 all the way up to Walt's death. So I was sort of I'd outline first and plug things in, and this was sort of a totally different task for me, because I'm now working with, okay, what photos are going in. I think about, of all the photos I purchased, I think all but maybe 3 or 4 went in, because the 3 or 4 photos just weren't great, and I was just like, I don't know what to do here. So it was just sort of like a different way for me to plug and play. And
yeah, it's like a puzzle that you were assembling in a way.
Exactly.
It's a cool scrapbook.
Yes.
Yeah.
First day.
And it's interesting, because I think Rob Yo, who does the design work for me, he sort of was like, he's like, I sort of get a scrapbook vibe here with the paperback. He's like, let's do like the torn ticket on the front, or the ticket on the front, and have that. I was like, oh yeah, I get that. That works.
You got photographs, you got clippings, you have quotes.
Yeah.
Are there any misconceptions that you think people might have about reading, in a sense, or researching photographs?
So I am not artistic at all. I'm not great at taking photos. Um, so it was interesting for me to see some of these photos and be like, wow, there's a photo of the woman with her shoe. She's sitting on a park bench, and like, it's a great photo. I would have never thought to take that photo. And then it was like, what do I do with this? So that sort of leads me, I touched on this briefly, was, like some of the legend, the lore of Disney, how, everything sort of takes on a life of its own. And there's, the story of, it was super hot that day and the park wasn't finished and the women's heels were sinking into the asphalt and blah, 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 blah. And, being somebody who writes and researches, I'm all about, the let's document and let's see if this is real. Can we substantiate the temperature? Or was this just another great story? I mean, Disney's a storyteller. Walt was a storyteller. They come up with good things for good stories and blah, 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 blah. So I went back and looked, and the temperature, it wasn't that hot. I mean, it was warm, and I included the temperature in the book to, sort of dispute the legend and lore, which brought us to, like the great quote of from Walt, when just looking at a woman here on the park bench, it says, "Women are the best judges of anything we turn out. Their taste is very important. They're the theater goers, the ones who drag men in. If the women like it, the heck with the men." I mean,
Here, here, Walt.
Yeah, here, Walt. But this is just like, these are like, it's one of those things that was, for me, it was like, lightning in a bottle, that I thought to marry those two quotes, put that picture in that quote. And I was like, oh, this is good. Where else would I put the quote about? I don't know. It was one of those things that when everything works and hits and clicks, it's like, this is good.
So I think with photographs, as a history teacher who tries to get students to use primary sources, I think everyone thinks photographs are an easy quote document because you don't have to quote read anything. But I think they can be harder because you don't have any context. In a text document, or you had talked about having documents that you've purchased from, file lots, it tells you exactly what it is. It has who wrote it, the main idea, probably a date, its arguments on the page. But for photographs, and I think also with digital world we're in now, like with Instagram, like we scroll through them so fast. But you do, to really get the effect of this book, I was really excited that we had the digital copy, the ebook copy, because I could zoom in.
Yes.
And that was really cool to be able to do, to look at the photograph. And I know that's a misconception my students have. So they get really excited and like, oh, I'm going to use the picture. But then they don't actually, when they're trying to use it in like a historical argument, they don't actually get into, what do you think the picture means? Like, why is that woman sitting there? And why was that worthy of taking a picture in that moment? They'll just be like, this is a woman sitting on a bench changing her shoe. And like, they think that's evidence. And photographs actually have a lot more to them.
It's deep and there's depth, and I often say sometimes I'm in like as deep as a puddle. I don't always, so it's, some of these things are hard. But on page 14, there's a picture of Ronald Reagan, way before he became president, and there's this little boy sitting next to him, gazing out on the railing, and just, I don't know, for something, it's one of those things where, again, I look at that photo and I'm like, what was he thinking about? And is he still alive? Maybe he's 80 years old now, 85 years. Like, it's one of those, it is one of those. And there's a woman in the background. She's like got her hand on her head and it's really hot. And there's a woman in a hat. I don't know. It's one of those, that was a great picture. I'm using that picture for obviously because it's Ronald Reagan. But then you look at the, what's going on in the background, as you said, it's what's the saying? It's a picture tells 1,000 words. Picture says 1,000 words. I don't even know what that, that saying is, but yeah,
there's a lot more going on in a photograph. So I think they don't get, I just want to encourage that if listeners get to like really take time to look at them, because it can be very easy to flip through this really quickly and be like, oh, Ronald Reagan, oh, great picture of a Chicken of the Sea pirate ship. But if you don't take a second to really look at all the signage, zoom into it, there's a lot going on in each of these photographs.
It's one of those random things that I started to do now. If someone sends me a picture, like they text me a picture of something where they're out somewhere, I've now started to like zoom in and look at the background, see what's going on there. And then,
That's a whole plot point in the new Superman movie. If
okay,
you've
so I didn't
seen
see it,
that,
but that's like, I will
there's
zoom and be like, and then sometimes I'll like screenshot. I'm like, what's that all about? Like, what's going on
Yeah.
back there?
I
Like you,
think you'll
yeah,
like I know that's not Disney, but that is you'll like that if you see it because that's exactly what ends up happening. Not and that doesn't give too much away there,
yeah,
but that's fun.
it's super cool.
So again, in your introduction, you explain how you wanted to use primary sources, quotes from Walt, those newspaper articles to caption the photos. And you did touch on this before, but I wanted to expand on that a little more of what led you to that decision. You had boxes of documents, you had these photographs that came in your possession. What did that turn into that you were like, these two should go together?
So I looked at each photo as like a topic, right? So each photo, there was something in there. Can I find a fact or a quote or something that lends itself to each other? It's like, a symbiotic relationship here. Like, do I have a quote or I have some information that can sort of tell the story or, reference the photo? So on page 11, it's a picture of you see like, the parking lot and it's packed, opening day parking lot. And then, so I get a quote from Walt here. The first year I leased the parking concession, brought in the usual security guards, things like that. But I soon realized my mistake. I couldn't have outside help and get over with my idea of hospitality. So, and the quote goes on. But it was like, okay, can I find something to match? It was like, it's like the little card game kids play when they're all face down and you flip it over and you see what you have and you got to put it back down and try and find the other, and you go to another piece and flip it over. Do you have a match? Do you remember? Was it memory? I think that's
Yes,
what
Yeah.
that's what came to my mind.
yeah. So it was like memory. Like, okay, I know what pictures I have. Let me go see some information and can we, can my memory work to make it happen? And I think for the most part I did. Here and there, there's a couple rogue ones that are like long shots, but I had to stay the course. So if I have 90% of the book like that, I'm like, okay, well, here and there, well, you gotta maybe it's a little bit of a stretch, but I gotta keep, I gotta go with it. Some of them are home runs, some of them aren't, but I guess that's like you can't hit a home run every time. There were certain things like I really wanted to get in there. Like I had a quote that I had a piece of information that I was holding on to forever, and I didn't know where I could get it in. I finally, it's page 21, and it's basically Kate Kamen, who was in charge of licensing and merchandising, and this is a quote from, of all places, the Montreal Gazette, April 23rd, 1936. So the photo on page 21 is, it's a little bit of a parade and you see Snow White and everybody's going by and it's a good photo. It's nothing spectacular. But the quote is, Walt Disney is one step ahead of others in the motion picture industry. He is now engaged in a full-length feature picture that will take 1 year to complete at a cost of $500,000, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. A contract has been drawn up between Walt Disney and RKO Distributing Company, where arrangements have been completed for the use of Mickey Mouse characters for television in your homes. Therefore, when television entertainment is made possible in the near future, probably the first entertainment to be presented will be Walt Disney's comic characters. Okay, so 1936, they're talking about TV.
That's crazy.
And I sat on this quote like this was something that I don't, years ago I saw, and I found in my research and I just saved it. I printed it out. I have like a Tupperware, not Tupperware, I have like a Rubbermaid container filled with things that I print and, eventually hopefully can use. And I saw that picture and I'm like, oh, it's a decent picture. And there's Snow White. But to me, like the beef of it really is like in 36, we're talking about television, which super early,
Mm-hmm.
aside from the fact that, Disneyland gets Walt onto television. It gets, that's his foray into the medium, even though, he did have the Christmas special and things like that. But it was just like, I'm going to use this quote. It's not really applicable to
Yeah.
picture, but
No,
No,
it
I think
makes
it
sense to
is.
me. Yeah, and he was just such a visionary, had all this foresight, and you found a way to work it in there, so it absolutely
yeah,
fits.
1936 television. Come on, that's kind of nuts.
What I like about the format of your book, though, is with the focus on it's all primary sources. We have photographs, we have clippings and quotes. It doesn't read like a history book. So even though we're presenting history, I guess that scrapbook feel, and I think that's a really good example with the Snow White picture from 55, but a quote from 36, is that you're letting the reader figure out what they want to take from that. But also, I found myself multiple times, depending on the quote that you picked or the newspaper clipping, that I would go back to the photo and I would look at it differently. And I like that you had the picture first and that, or at least in the ebook format, it's picture first, quote second. So you can look at these in two different ways of taking later the context information that you gave me with a quote or the clipping, and then relook at the photograph and reanalyze it again through that lens. So thinking about like making that connection, I wasn't thinking about Snow White and television and look how Walt made that jump before anyone thought about it. But then I relooked at that photo again differently with that quote. So I think you get two opportunities to look at the photos this way. And history's focus is on cause and effect and analytics and interpreting history and presenting that author's argument for you. And it's up to you to decide what you think and feel about it. But there's no argument presented here. It's here are things. What do you take from it? And maybe that's your anthropology background coming through. But I really think that was a cool medium and something that Courtney and I haven't really got to read on our podcast.
In any of these books, and any of the, I wrote 6 books about Disney and a handful, particularly having to do with Walt, obviously, not about the parks, but just I never want to speak for him, and I never want to suppose what he's going to say. I mean, we could sit all day on social media and see what Disney's doing or not doing and say, oh, Walt would like this or wouldn't like whatever.
You would hate that we changed Tom Sawyer Island.
Right. I mean, so to me, it's like, I don't ever want to inject my thought or my feelings or any of these things into any of my writing. I try really hard not to.
You let him speak for himself, which I think is so great. We love to dig into the process here, obviously. And I was curious what your method was in matching them. Was it like actually a physical, like, okay, I just picture that meme of the guy like connecting strings to a wall and everything.
Okay. This is how old school or non-techie. I mean, I'm pretty tech savvy, but when it comes to writing, even just any of my other books, I print everything. So I print the photos, and then I print the quote that I think worked, and then I staple them together, and then I put them in order, and I organize them to try and go in like some sort of cohesive linear fashion, and I basically assemble the book in my hands, and I basically do the same thing when I'm writing. Like when I wrote Buying Disney's World, I just, I would write whatever the topic was, and I would always keep whatever quote or reference I was using, and I would number them, and I basically do like the bibliography, and I'd number the citations, and I would just go through with the hard copies, and I would print things, and that chapter's done, I staple them together, and I fold them over, and we go to the next one, and I still have like these Rubbermaid containers with all my sources and references in line, in order of the book. And I basically did the same thing with this. I would print the photo, and then I would marry the quote to it, staple them, and then had them all done. Basically, I had all the quotes done, and then I went through and sorted them out and made them the way I want them to go in the book. And I mean, it's super labor intensive, because then I have to now do all this and then do it like an e-version, then I have to like write it and put it together and make it look like some sort of book. And then it goes to, I actually had the book edited, because I just was like, edit, I wrote some stuff, and who knows, maybe I transpose some whatever in the quotes, and then it goes to the format person, and then it goes to the layout, and blah, 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 blah. But yeah, so I basically old school print everything out and do it by hand.
I love that.
Frankenstein and Courtney.
Yeah, we had like Frankenstein drafts in college where
Really?
we had the same instructor. That's how we met as teaching assistants for her. And she would encourage you to, when you write a draft, take scissors to it and cut it up and play around with how it moves. So I was like, you're preaching to the choir.
I get it.
Yeah, like cut out each paragraph, or even if you want to go to the sentence level and just keep moving things around.
Yeah. So when I first started writing, I think I came across Scrivener, I think was the name of the program.
Yeah, I see a lot of people are using that program.
I bought a copy, I opened it up, I'm like, oh, there's you can like post, create like a corkboard thing where you can make note cards and blah, blah, blah. I'm like it lasted like 5 minutes. I'm like, yeah, this isn't for me. I shouldn't have bought the program, I should have bought like a ream of paper because we're just going to print these things and rock out that way.
I love that. So while this book has a lot of photographs, we do get a foreword from Bob Gurr about his first day on the Disneyland opening. What was that like for you to get Bob Gurr to write a foreword? He's all over the place right now with the 70th anniversary. His social media is crazy.
Yeah, he's fantastic. I mean, I mean, I still remember watching like Modern Marvels when they
Yeah.
did Walt Disney World, and one of those things that's imprinted in my brain of when he starts talking about Walt and he stops halfway through because he started to cry and he got choked up. I mean, he's an amazing, brilliant man, obviously, but the the um the forward was just I just reached out. I was on a whim, and I was just like, I mean, he was there. Let's see. And part of it came from I sent Tom Morris, who's obviously a retired Imagineer, but he's like he knows more Disney history than anybody times 10. And I was like, hey, you want to look at these photos? And here's where I'm going with this book. And he loved the photos. He's like, this is fantastic, great concept. And he sends me back a photo, and he says, do you know who's in this photo? Do you know who's in this picture? And I said, no. He's like, look again. I looked like 10 times, and I had no idea.
Yeah.
We're looking at Bob Gurr in 1955. So he's like, that's Bob Gurr. And I'm like, you're kidding me. And he's like, no, look at him. And there he was. So I was like, oh, he's like, reach out to him, send him the picture. He would love to, he'd love to see this picture. So I did. And I was like, oh, if you love the picture that much, oh, by the way, would you like to write the foreword for me? And
That's awesome.
He's like, absolutely. I would love to. And
that's so cool.
And I thought it was one of those things like, okay, he says yes. And, maybe I'll actually get it back from him. Like maybe it'll happen. I mean, not to talk poorly about Bob, but it's just like he's so busy. He's got a lot going on. Maybe maybe it doesn't fit into his calendar. And like 3 days later, there it was. He emailed it back to me. He's like, here it is. He's like, send it to an editor or edit yourself because he's like, English was not my forte, but here we go. And I was like, wow, okay.
That's awesome. Because he even could have just said, thank you. I've never seen this photograph of me before. And even that alone would have been amazing.
Totally.
But that's such a cool story. I love that you reach out to him by just sharing a photograph.
Yes. I mean, how do I not? Just like it's funny because I actually shared another photo with Jolie Fisher, and I had like a couple great photos of her father, Eddie Fisher, with Debbie Reynolds. So I reached out to her, and this is before I published a book, and this is before it, was even sort of in the works. And I was like, I wonder if my mother or father was famous and long gone, and somebody had like this never before seen photo, I'd appreciate somebody. So I reached out to her, and I was like, hey, I have a picture of your dad. And she's like, oh my God, you kidding? And from Disney, and she's like, oh, please send it to me. So I sent it to her, and yeah, she made her day. She was super excited.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was Debbie Reynolds, Walt Disney, Eddie Fisher, and it was page 37. And it's Debbie Reynolds looks beautiful, and it's just a really good photo. And in the back is this was another thank you, Tom Morris, because Tom's like, oh, that's Card Walker in the back. And I was like, really? He's like, yep. Because again, another guy who I would know the face as an older man, but not
right
circa 1955.
Well, it's no surprise here on the podcast that all three of us are, I'd say, well read in Disney history and have read several accounts and secondary retellings of opening day. How did seeing Disneyland's opening day and inaugural year in color and from an attendee's perspective change your understanding of the opening of Disneyland?
It was, it's interesting because Disney, is so good at coordinating everything and showing you what they want you to see. And this was just sort of like a snapshot of somebody's day, and I really enjoyed that because you see some of the kinks in the armor here. You see some of the chaos. You see things that that Disney ordinarily wouldn't want you to see, like the photo on the cover of the book, the big tower, to broadcast film. Like that's clearly not something Disney would really want you to see in the show as they put it. So it's just interesting to see. It was basically one man's day, a guy's day, and taking pictures as he went along. And it was kind of cool to see, it was a little rough around the edges, but it was a great day.
I know for my students, I'm going to pull my teacher expertise in here. So many history, like old photos are in black and white that it's so easy to think they're in the past. And I always like floor my students, like we'll be looking at stuff on the civil rights movement, the 1960s or the 1970s. And they're like, yeah, that was so long ago. I was like, my parents were there. Like the concept of time, that there are people alive who went to Disneyland on opening day. We think of Bob Gurr, like we're throwing these names out, but there's people amongst us, the common folk, who went there in its first 3 or 4 years. And it's really 70 years is a long time, but that is a lifespan. There are people alive, and seeing it in color really, for me, made me not think of Disneyland as being old. It's not something that happened in the past. It's very lively to see it in color.
Vibrant. Yeah. I mean, and 100%. And again, this actually speaks to probably what we spoke about a little bit earlier. And it's sort of, off the subject. But one of the things I thought was super cool were you actually see African American folks there. Like, and you're
Yeah.
talking 1955. So you're talking about, a segregated country,
Mhm.
and it didn't matter. The doors were open for whoever wanted to come. And that's, when you look towards, I think it's towards the end of the book, there are a bunch of families there, and it's like, oh, this is cool. It's a segregated time. And Southern California had some, Orange County had some KKK things going on there, and here we go. Walt just was opening the doors for everybody, and that's one
From
of
day
those
one.
from day one, and that's, to me, that's awesome.
And also the fashion. I loved
Oh
getting
yeah.
zooming in,
Well, so that
seeing
was
some
sort
of
of
that too was really cool.
absolutely, because that's sort of one of the things when that's how I noticed a couple African American folks. I'm looking at what people were wearing. You're looking at how they're dressing, and I'm like, in the background, I'm like, people are dressed really nice. Everybody's dressed nicely, and there's a lot of dresses, and men in dress slacks and suits, and that's so cool.
That's where the concept of Dapper Day that lives on today
Yes.
really stems from. Just the
Yeah,
idea
it's
that
true.
people would dress up, put on their finest to go enjoy the
Go
park.
out. It was an event. I mean, it was like a real, we're gonna have a great day.
I think the color photographs also help you place. Now, granted, I've only visited Disneyland one time, but even now comparing my photographs that I have in 2023 to that, I had an easier time. Disneyland looks very different in a lot of regards, but I had an easier time placing like where I was in the park because with the color, I don't know, the buildings made more sense. The buildings looked more recognizable, that it was easier for me to be like, oh, this is what it looks like now in my head from when I visited, but I could see it better. And I think the color helped with that placement as
That makes
well.
sense. And you can see, and it's funny, the color also shows you some of the warts. Like the watercolor looks terrible. Um, there's tons of spots where there's not grass, and the grass looks like weeds, and like you could see the level of things being thrown
Yeah,
together, and
how much blue sky comes
like,
in.
yeah, being unprepared, but yet still being able to pull it off. And yeah, or even like, the chicken of like even like the pirate ship, like it's
I kind of
such a
wish that was still there.
right. I mean,
We talked
like,
about that in our last episode with the 55ers. There were
yeah.
bios of people who worked there.
Yes. Oh yeah,
And I
I'm
was like,
familiar.
I had
Yeah.
no idea there's this go get a tuna fish sandwich in the middle of a pirate ship in the middle of Fantasyland. And
And I
I just,
gotta
oh, that sounds so cool.
I gotta think that a tuna fish sandwich on a hot day is probably not like the best choice,
Oh
but
yeah, right?
yeah. But the
Go
pirate ship
go to
also,
Columbia Harbor House next time you're and
yes.
see what their tuna fish sandwich holds up outside.
Page 89, like the picture of the pirate ship is amazing in color. I mean,
Yeah,
it's fantastic. Yeah. Different perspective.
very cool. All of this kind of comes back to this idea of nostalgia. And in the beginning, you have quotes and clippings focused on that concept. So why is nostalgia so important to understanding Disneyland itself?
Obviously not so much now, but if you want to distill Disney down, they're the biggest purveyor of nostalgia in the world. That's what it's always been for decades. I mean, Disneyland, yeah, obviously you get the future too. It's Tomorrowland, but like Disney's so good at pulling on our own heartstrings, our own nostalgia, our own history of life together. When we go to parks or whatever, we see a movie We some often remember, oh, I saw this with my mom or dad when I was younger, or we go on an attraction that was somebody's favorite. It's all about nostalgia. And then the parks take it next level, and Disneyland's the next level. It's just nostalgia. It's history. They're so good at putting it all together and presenting it.
Yeah, I think it's at the core of it, even just beyond our nostalgia for the parks. If you think of something like Main Street as a turn of the century town at the time of Disneyland's opening, that's 40 to 50 years prior. If you were now to I guess open Disneyland today, it'd be the
I don't want to think
80s
about
or
that.
the 70s. Break
Yeah,
your brain there, but it's Walt was building that with the nostalgia for his guests in mind, like, oh, this is like the town that he grew up in, Marceline. We hear that a lot, but something that his guests would recognize and feel nostalgic about as well.
they're the biggest purveyor of nostalgia. Like that's I mean, that's like, I feel like in a sense, that's the heartbeat of the company.
I agree. I'd love to. I know we've alluded to some as we've gone throughout, but take a moment if Emily and I could each share like one to two of our favorite photos, and we'd be happy to hear yours if it's if you're able to pick a favorite
Yes, of
among
course.
all of them. I am, as is Emily, so I'm gonna probably steal one of hers. We are both huge fans of the film Singing in the Rain. It is among with Disney one of the cruxes of our friendship and learning our shared interests over 10 years ago. So a delight for me to see Debbie Reynolds. I do have to share my story that Debbie Reynolds is a liar because as much as I love her, I shared this with Emily when I was texting, and I'm just gonna credit it up to old age and maybe memory loss. I've read all three of her memoirs or autobiographies, so I don't remember which one it was because this was about 10 years ago when I was reading it. But she tells a story in the book about being at Disneyland's opening day and what a wonderful park it is. And she said, and as I was riding It's a Small World with Mr. Disney, I turned to him and said, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, Debbie Reynolds, you were a liar. It's a Small World was not an opening day
She's a
attraction. So
bold-faced
that is
liar.
a bold-faced lie. So I'm sorry to speak ill of Debbie. I love her dearly, but I just remember being in the airport reading that book and be like, no, but Debbie, where
No,
is your
ma'am.
editor? Where is your dramaturg? Your
No, ma'am. You're
that is
wrong.
not. So I have to assume like the only boat ride then was Jungle Cruise. So she must have conflated her memory. But I was like, how did that get to
Wow.
print? But at least your book proved to me she was in fact there. She just didn't remember what she was doing.
Yes.
I love you,
Wow.
Debbie. Please don't haunt me tonight.
Or
I'm
maybe a
sorry.
little, maybe if she wants you, you guys can have a little heart to heart and be like,
We'll
Debbie,
chat. I'm like,
come
Debbie,
on. I
what are you
mean,
doing?
we love doing Halloween Town, but what's going
Yes.
on? But what's going on here with this? Yeah.
So loved seeing her along with her husband at the time, Eddie Fisher. And I know we already mentioned it, but I thought it was really fun to see the Chicken of the Sea pirate ship,
So
especially
good.
in bright color. That was just something Emily and I had talked about last month in the 55ers book specifically. And we're like, that's just wild. Like there's this pirate ship, and to really get a sense of placemaking with that wider shot of where it is relative to the rest of Fantasyland, because I think Fantasyland, while some of the bones are still there, parts of it look very different
And
today.
the detail on the ship.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
well, it's go big or go home, clearly, always. And that was he went big on that one. I mean, that ship was beautiful.
And I wonder if because they had the ship that went around Tom Sawyer Island, that maybe later they felt okay getting rid of that one. But like, it's such a different type. Like the ship in Frontierland is not the same vibe as like Fantasyland pirate ship. Like they could have done so much with that, even if they got rid of Chicken of the Sea. That could have been pirates. That should have been Captain Hook's ship
Oh
at
yeah.
some point. But yeah,
Yeah.
that photograph though is great because most of the ones we saw, Courtney, I think in the 55ers, it didn't have the full ship in the shot, or it had from the angle it was at, it had so many other things in the foreground as well. So you never really
Yeah.
got to see the whole ship on its own. And that's such a great shot. I wonder where he was standing to take where the person was standing to take that. Because that was such a good picture.
And I love looking at the foreground in a lot of those because you can see
Mhm.
that it's pretty sparse in a lot of those photos.
Yeah. So some that stood out to me, we already talked about a couple of them, but this one showed me something I didn't know was in Disneyland. So the Court of Honor that was in, I think, Tomorrowland, the American flag with all the flags, it gave me such Epcot and Liberty Square vibes before either of those were thought about. Um, but I didn't know that that was there. And I don't think I've ever seen that on a map or talked about in things that we've read before on Disneyland.
Yeah, so many of so many of the photos there. Oh, and this, so it's another, like, in that same area, like the Monsanto Hall of Chemistry, like although that whole area is like super cool if you think about what at the time, what it, what was going on, being sort of like being in the, at the forerunner of technology and science and things like that, and Walt sort of had his finger on the pulse. But yeah, you talk about like, think was it, this is like a question, obviously maybe like a Tom Morris question, but it's like, so the Court of Honor, like there's all these like flagpoles. Was it like to fill up space? Or I mean, we know Walt was super patriotic, loved his country and all those things, but it's a big chunk of space there. I don't know, but it's, yeah, it's totally, it's one of those, I don't want to say forgotten thing, but it's something that's not on the radar.
But I feel like if you looked at that photograph and you did not know it was Disneyland, you
Right.
could mistake that for Epcot,
100%.
early Epcot.
Yeah.
And then another photograph I really enjoyed. Um, I know the page numbers. I did love seeing the photographs of Disneyland for the holidays. I like that you ended with that. Uh, but one that really stood out to me was this little boy on a fence railing just looking at the Santa Fe Railroad. The train is going by a water tower, and he's really the only one in the shot. So the scale of this, he's got to be 5 or 6, I would say, in the 5 to 6 range. So the scale of him next to this train and the water tower, and he is a good 3 feet off the ground climbing up this fence post. I just, that wonder and awe, like you said, that moment where you're wondering where that person is, who that person, what they were thinking in that moment. That picture stood out to me.
Yeah, look how small like he's a speck in the scale of things. He's so small, but he's just soaking it up and living his best life there. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's yeah,
I thought that was a cute one.
that
He
is a
caught
good
my
one.
attention.
Yeah.
And then what are one to two of your favorites, if you haven't alluded to them already?
So so I love the photo that's on the cover. 'Just because it seems very raw. It's not something traditionally Disney would let you see. Um,
It's a
and
great photo.
it's such like to me, it's like, this is like, that was like the show that when I'm looking through the slides, when I bought the photos, I was like, oh, this is a showstopper. This photo right here this was it. I was tempted not to put it on the book because I wanted to, it was, to me, it was so special. I wanted to, I wanted everyone to discover it as they're flipping through, but I was like, at the same time, how do I not put this one, um, right dab on the cover? Because to me, the cover is everything. It draws people in. You pick up the book, it's whether you're going to buy it. A lot of times, often, it's whether you're going to buy the book or not is based upon the cover, or even if it grabs your eye to even think twice. I think that photo is great. And there's another photo I have to find it here. It's not, the photo itself isn't, it's not anything special. It's what's going on in the photo to me that is interesting. It's so on the paperback or hardcover, it's page 61, and it is a picture of Monsanto's Hall of Chemistry. So it's not a great photo. It's like, it shows a picture of the building and shows everybody outside. Good picture of the folks, walking around. But there's two guys hanging out in Tomorrowland that definitely should not be there. They are in, it speaks to, Walt wanting to have his way and keep everybody in the lands they're supposed to be in. And these two guys stick out like a sore thumb. So it's like, this is like the forerunner to, okay, we need get some utilidors, and we need to keep folks in their proper lands. So I don't know
Oh,
if
now I need to go find that.
so
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh.
yeah. See those two guys
There's
hanging
a
out in
guy,
Tomorrowland? Yeah.
a guy in a tri-corner hat
Yep. And there's
right
one
in
right
the
behind them.
middle.
Yeah, there's two of them.
Yeah,
I
look
think
at
if
that.
any land can get away with it, it is Tomorrowland. You could be like, oh, they're time traveling. That's what we that's
Oh,
what
Oh,
we
that's
do
true.
here. I'll save Walt
Courtney,
there.
you're too much on the you're they've trained you well,
They
Courtney.
did, they did.
Yes, time
She is a
travel.
space traveler.
Yes. So I love that. I just love that photo for the, I don't know, the nerdiness of what are those guys doing there? Come on, they're better than that, but not really. It's 1955. They did what they had to
And
do.
you have some good foreshadow. Like you said, this is some good foreshadowing of when they put Florida together. How do you have people walk around to get to their workplaces without killing or without disrupting the show? But I also love the quote you had in there. I'm going to paraphrase this. Someone said, like, you can't run a destination like this if it can't go year round. The only other place you could maybe do this is Florida. Like, that's a whole 20 years before.
It's it's the last page of the book.
And
Uh,
I thought that was such a great way to like make us think about where this goes after opening day of Disneyland.
this is another one of your. This is like another eureka moment when I found the picture of the exit. There, the pictures
Hmm.
looking back on the exit. And I'm like, oh, well, this one's we're gonna close out the book with this one because it's he's saying goodbye. Clearly, he left for the day. And then I was just pouring through old notes from the beginning of when I was writing Buying Disney's World because I had a big crossover of content from sort of loosely telling Disneyland to get us to Disney World. And I'm like, let me look back there. And sure enough, I find that quote. Will Disneyland be duplicated elsewhere? I don't think so. You have to have a year-round business to make money from such a large investment. The only other place it would be possible is Florida. And that's the Oakland Tribune, May 8th, 1955. There we
That's
go.
awesome.
Yep.
But we just want to touch on two more quick stories before we close out because we just read 55ers and there were quite a few things that corroborated between the two books. Um, but you give a lot of space to the Evans brothers who did the landscaping. And in your decisions of putting these captions together with these photographs, you could very easily picked many things for Fantasyland, Main Street, or Adventureland, but you put a lot of emphasis on the brothers and the landscaping. What made you want to feature that?
I think so many folks are underappreciated in the story, and the Disney sort of putting all together and basically moving mountains in a year and like doing incredible things in a year. I liked the background on the Evans, and so I'm a number. I like numbers.
Mhm.
Like I like fiscal numbers. It's always interesting to me to see you know the how much money was spent and what they what they grossed in the year and excuse me. But I love the numbers from the Evans brothers of what like how many things they planted, how many acres they moved. I mean, it just to me was fascinating. Like that to me really, yeah. You say it was done in a year and it was something that could never happen now just for like permitting and things like that. But putting in the actual numbers and what they really what they did, how they physically moved things and made like 6 months ago, 6 months prior, we're talking about sitting in an orange or orchard, like in fields. I think that if it doesn't tell the story of how hard and what a Herculean task Walt did and put through, those numbers say it right there. I mean, everybody says, "Oh, they did it here. It's amazing." No, if you read some of the numbers of what they planted and what they moved and blah 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 blah, I mean, it's nuts.
The other one we wanted to touch on was C.V. Wood. We decided he was kind of the villain of the 55ers in the
Yes.
Disneyland story. And you paired a story about him with a hierarchical drawing of the company. Can you tell us more about the decision to pair those two together?
Isn't he the villain? Or I don't know. I don't know what he is. But it was one of those things where I like to be honest with history. So I don't want to, I don't want to have my own narrative or retell things or omit things. So he was a big part of the story. Um, I lucked out that there was a picture of him in one of the photos. Thank you, Tom Morris. Tom, picked him out. And I like the fact that did have a quote where, Walt's talking about like, there's no geniuses in the studio. Nobody's, we're all equals here. I mean, well, that's a crock because there was a genius and Walt was it. And Walt was the boss and that was that. But you have to tell the Wood story. So the chart, the hierarchical chart was pretty cool. It wasn't something that I've seen a ton of. That had to be included. And it was one of those, another thing where it just sort of like it all fit together for me. And I was like, oh, this is going to be good.
Well, on the organizational chart, he's right below Walt. So Walt is on board of directors, the executive committee, and he's president of Disneyland. But then C.V. Wood is right below him as vice president and general manager. So the two of them butt heads a lot.
Yes. And from, what history tells us or what the stories tell us, Wood sort of went rogue and did his own thing and kind of, you know, blurred the line of what's ethical or unethical or promises. And, I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, he got it done, but probably not the way Walt would have liked it.
And he's the guy that delegates. So you see on the chart that after C.V. Wood, that's where it starts branching. So everyone reports to him before they report to Walt. So that makes sense of how he could maybe manipulate the position and the power that he had because it was his word to Walt before anyone else's.
Right. And I think Walt was skeptical from the jump with, having him in. There's the quote: "We allow no geniuses around our studio. If anybody gets highbrow around the studio, out he goes." And I paired that with, the flow chart and basically a little bit of Wood and that relationship soured. And yeah, I guess, and as they say, the rest is history.
Indeed. And you have done such a marvelous job capturing this history here. We have just two more questions. Now, we have asked you our usual two final questions before, of course, having you on the show previously, but we have a little twist on them this time around. So we usually ask for, a book recommendation that you love, but this time we would love another book about Disneyland specifically that you would suggest readers add to their shelves.
So I really like the 70th book that just came out.
That's perfect.
Aside from the fact that I have a photo in there, I think it's around page 50 or 53. But it's just it's a really well done book. Yeah, it's just a great book.
I think that's a good choice, and you'll hear why in a moment, but I'll let Emily take the last question.
So we always ask for advice. And back on episode 19, your advice to listeners for aspiring authors was to not overthink it. And I'm going to quote you. You said, quote, "If you really want to do it, just do it. Sometimes you just need to leap," end quote. But since then, you now have 5 books under your belt. Do you have any other advice as you've gone forward in your author journey to add on top of that?
Once or twice a month, I get somebody who reaches out and is like, "Oh, I have a great idea for a book." I'm like, "Oh, I don't know." I'm always, just do it. Just literally just sit down and start doing it. And don't overthink it. I'm going to say the same thing. I hate that I don't have anything better to bring to the table. But some people, like the old saying is like, look before you leap. Just leap. Just go. And have faith in yourself because, I wrote one book and I was like, is anybody going to read it? Well, people did. And that led to 2 and 3. And here we are. And on and on and on. So just,
you got to have that faith, trust, and pixie dust.
1,000,000%.
Well, we are glad that you did it. And I know our next book is glad that you did it because you shared already. As you can guess, in August, our selection is The Happiest Place on Earth, The Incredible Story of Walt Disney's Disneyland by Don Hahn and Christopher Merritt with a foreword from Bob Iger. So thrilled to hear that was enjoyable for you. We're looking forward to digging in there. We'll keep an eye out for your licensed photo. In the meantime, if listeners want to keep up with Book of the Mouse Club, we're on Instagram at Book of the Mouse. You can email us with comments or ideas to bookofthemouseclub@gmail.com. Please be sure to leave us a review wherever you listen so others can find our podcast and read and listen along with us. If you want to keep up with me, Courtney, I'm on Instagram at Great Gutsby.
And I'm on Instagram at Emily_McD. And Aaron, where's the best place for listeners to keep up with you and for listeners to buy your books?
Books are available everywhere. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Target. If they sell books, you could usually find my book there. MCO at the bookstore there. If you're, catching a flight and get a delay, go run in and grab an Aaron H. Goldberg book. And I'm not as active on social media as I used to be, but Twitter, X, whatever it is now, Instagram at Aaron H. Goldberg or aaronhgoldberg.com.
And we will also link your website in our show notes as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, for a book that is filled with plenty of quotes, as our guest today, it is your task to choose the closing quote. So I'd love to hear which one you selected.
So I'm going to go with nostalgia. I'm going to go with a quote here from the paperback or hardcover. It's page 49. And it's from Walt just saying, I love nostalgia myself. I hope we never lose some of the things of the past. And I think that resonates just, I think about present day Disney and what's going on. And, I don't want to lose some of the things of the past. I get it, but I'm still having, I'm not going to go crazy and, do a write-in campaign, but let's leave a little nostalgia in there. I don't need all the new stuff. I need a little bit of the old.
It makes sense to me, and I think that was a very fitting one. We're glad you included a lot of the old in your book here, and thank you again for joining us, sharing the rich process that went into this book.
Ladies, thank you so much.
Always a pleasure to have you, Erin, and best of luck with your next projects.
Thank you so much.
The Mouse Club has no affiliation with the Walt Disney Company. The views and opinions expressed by hosts and participants are theirs and theirs alone. They do not represent the organizations or companies they happen to work for.